Welcome to Jazz Zone Together, our new online jazz community, providing educational and classroom resources and interviews with artists, celebrities, and jazz educators, as well as valuable teaching tips and repertoire suggestions. Today, we welcome Marco Pignataro, multi talented saxophonist and jazz educator and faculty member at the renowned Berklee College of Music, where he currently leads the Berklee Global Jazz Institute. Now I'd like to bring in Dick Dunscomb to conduct the interview with Marco. Dick, the mic is all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Well, I've been waiting for this one. Hello, Marco.
Hello, Professor. So nice to see you.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to see you too.
Thank you.
Everybody is getting a pretty good idea about who Marco Pignataro is. You're well known now as a professional player, as an educator, and all of those things we'll get into as we go through the interview. But for the time being, let's go back to the beginning. Where did it all start, and how did it develop into what follows?
Wow, that's how much time we have because, it's a long story, Professor. All right, well, the short story is like I am originally from Italy, and as many European, I fell in love with jazz. And back then, when I was, in my 20s, we really didn't have a lot of programs that would allow you in Italy to study music and to, not at the level that I wanted to. And although we had a lot of artists coming and a lot of musicians around, but the whole idea of jazz education back then, I'm talking about well, I shouldn't say that, but okay. I say like early 80s, okay, late 90s, in Italy wasn't as developed as it is now. So to me, my most important decision of my life was to leave everything behind, which is always a very, very difficult decision to make, when especially we come with, beautiful places like Italy, great families, etc. But I did, I did. The love for music was just too overwhelming, and I wanted to be where I should be, in the United States, where the music is really, in a way, coming from and understanding from the cultural point of view, not just from a stylistic point of view. So that I did that very bravely back then. I left everything. I had back then a wife and two little kids. That did not stop me, and I went to Miami. And that's where really my chapter begins because, between the University of Miami and Florida International University, where I had the amazing honor and pleasure to study under you. And I think this has to be said immediately. I would not be here if you would not be for you, Professor Dunscomb. So I always, that I always, extremely grateful. But that was really a very good platform for me to begin understanding the music, understanding the culture, and getting connected with musicians, students, and professors that kind of resonate with that urgency, right? This need not to make money or to become famous or to just this need to live the music, to really be part of it, to really be a little piece of it. And this is what really motivated me and still motivates me today is this incredible love for this art form and for what it represents in terms of a cultural revolution and a social revolution. I think it's so much more than just music that we're talking about here. And to me, to be in the United States all these years, to really understand that part is what I think made really a big difference in my life as a musician, as a educator. And seeing people like you and the kind of thing you created in the school, like you've been such an example of creating curricular and creating programs that affected so many musicians. That was really inspiring too. So in a way, I'm still following your footsteps, Professor. So I'm glad that I have this way of like telling you in front of everybody.
Well, thank you, Marco. That's very, very kind of you to say that. Well, as you mentioned, we know that you grew up in Bologna, Italy,
Yes.
and immigrated to the United States. Can you share with us some of your early influences, including your mentors, and what drove you to a performance and teaching career in music?
Yeah, well, before coming to United States, I had a very important, I had a lot of people that I was admiring, but one of the important mentors, one of the first important guide was the amazing saxophone player Steve Grossman, who left the United States around, I think, in the late 70s, and he went to, maybe it was 80, I can't remember, but he lived in Europe for many years, and then he ended up in Italy, and he actually is lived in Italy in my hometown Bologna when I was starting to play the saxophone. So, Steve Grossman played, was one of the one that kind of after Wayne Shorten, the Miles Davis Quartet, that's who replaced Wayne, and then after him was Dave Lehman, and he was such an amazing, figure in jazz history in that time. So by having this kind of personality in my hometown and be able to take lesson with him and be able to listen to, this incredible monster of the instrument was extremely inspirational. And so this is where maybe even before coming to United States, having the opportunity to work a little bit with Steve Grossman and see him in our scene was really influential. And I'm sorry that he just passed. Like, I don't know if you know that, but he just passed 2 months ago. And so, I like to remember him, and I think that this is somebody that everybody should go back and really check the kind of legacy he left, especially with Elvin Jones and Dave Lehman, but even with Miles, everything he did. So when I came back to the United States, then, I had the fortune to find many people, like, for instance, Gary Campbell, that actually knew Steve Grossman. They were from the same scene, like the famous loft scene in New York in the 70s, and they would, like, get together and play, hours and hours in this loft until like 5 o'clock in the morning. And so it was nice to have that connection with somebody like Gary Campbell that was also part of the same scene as Steve Grossman, and of course Maestro Gary Keller, that in a way I always think he performed brain surgery on me in terms of playing the saxophone. I think he sort of like restructure everything that I was doing not correctly or properly. Also because in Italy I was coming as a same time that I was trying to learn jazz, I was actually studying classical music at the conservatory. And so I did 5 years of classical saxophone. And if you are a classical saxophonist, the music is beautiful. There's a lot of values to it, but it's really such a different path technically, right? Your embouchure, the sort of, the way you blow into an instrument, the sort of, even the mouthpiece. So once you get used to that, it's really hard to make the transition. And I was struggling. I was changing mouthpiece. I was changing reeds. I was asking, what should I do? And basically, I think Gary Keller from the University of Miami was really the person that really helped me get into this idea of transitioning from a classical sound to really get a full personal sound as a jazz musician. I'm really always will be very grateful to him, because I can see, like as now an educator, it's like these things are possible, right? You may come and have everything not working for you, and then you have a great teacher and say, well, why don't you do this, try this, and really make such a transformation. And to me, this is all things that I was observing, all this great teacher, like always telling you something that will really make, an impact, I mean, the first time I was in your office, the kind of things you were saying is just like the way, the influence you have as a musician. Then you start feeling, wow, this is really a community where now I'm taking, and tomorrow I really want to give. So in a way, this was, answering your question, is like I always wanted to be a jazz performer, and I left everything to do it, but I always wanted to be involved in giving back since the beginning. Is something that I always seen as a second vocation. Like the vocation of performing was very strong,
Mhm.
but then the vocation of sharing this, and we say educator, but this idea of like kind of like giving back all what you've been given is always been so strong. And really, it's even now, especially now in these crazy times, I can see how important it is our role as mentors to other, and the ability to shape, not just the love and the musicianship, but really life of people that respect us and they're around us and they look up to us. So it's a beautiful life, I believe. Just I feel very blessed.
As a faculty member at one of the nation's leading, most influential jazz institutions, the Berklee College of Music, you're at the epicenter of what happens with jazz education. And we know that you were responsible for starting the Global Jazz Program. Talk a little bit about that, about Berklee and about the program.
Yes, I would say I was co-responsible because I co-lead this incredible program with the amazing piano player Danilo Perez. Danilo is the artistic director, and it's been in the scene since many decades now, and most notably as a piano player for the Wayne Shorter Quartet for more than 13 years now, and so it's been a journey with Danilo to kind of really explore ideas about our education that would, especially when we started 10 years ago, were extremely novel. And Danilo has had this vision, this incredible original idea based on the fact that music can change the world and music can really have an effect on the community, and that we are not training our students in necessary from that point of view. So a lot of the jazz programs are really focused on techniques and development of improvisation, but he always felt, and we start having these amazing conversations like, well, what is the purpose? What can we do as jazz musicians? What is jazz, even just as a cultural element? What is suggesting? So we sort of like start talking about all these ideas and creating this program that is based basically on two very important factors. One, the idea of to create leadership in very, very advanced musician that wants to, really go to the next level and really become professional performer, but create this idea, the leadership in the sense of like, you are a leader in music, but you can also lead society through music, and it's your responsibility. So part of our program is at the same time that they have all the sort of like curriculum based on music and music education and jazz, but we also have a very robust program that has our now rich element where we bring the students, to hospital, we bring the student to prisons, we bring the student to travel around the world, work with kids with disabilities, work in projects that have a social activism point of view. So we train them to create proposals, to create grants, to advance the power of music, to create spaces for music that are not just limited to the bandstand, right? So it's this idea of creating and educating a jazz musician to become a leader in its community, or their community, to bring important values that are connected with jazz, with the music, democracy, equity, anything that has to do with this idea of creativity, looking at a life as this way of like interconnection. And so basically, adding this element to their education at the same time that we bring them to play at the Blue Note, at the Disney Club, or we're going to Paris, we're going here, we're going there. But at the end, it's always this idea of going back to serving others, and how can we do that as musicians? So basically, trying to extrapolate and kind of expand this idea of us as performer entertainers and become performer leaders, right? And really talk about politics, and really talk about humanity, talk about how to improve our community, how to improve our world, and feeling empowered to do so as musicians. And so that really kind of needs to be programmed in a very specific way with lecture, with classes, but a lot of really practical experience, bringing the student to really do the work, right, and really make them see and experience from that point of view what happens to even their music when they can see that connection, right? Because maybe one night, right, they playing at the Blue Note in New York, and they have all this very, tourists and this jazz audience, being very polite and clapping, and they can feel like, wow, I'm playing the temple of, of jazz. And then the day after, you bring them to a senior home, and then they play at the standard, and they see what that music meant to that person, and you see the tears, and they see the emotional reaction, and they see another way of communicating that is so direct. And by the way, you were the first one making me experience that, Professor, because I don't remember when Clark Terry came to Miami, and we did a tour of all these senior home, and I was in the band, and I was playing next to Clark Terry, and we would go to all of this senior home, and that experience still resonate with me. So you see again how, like, there's such a beautiful community of trying to really kind of promote similar value. So music as a way of social activism and mentorship. So one of the things that Danilo and I talk a lot is this idea of creating an academic program that is not academic. So yes, we're inside Berklee. Yes, we're a program that is credited, and yes, there's all this credit that we have to take. But how we can go back to this old idea of jazz taught by a master artist to a master apprentice, right? And so basically the idea was to create a group of artists of very, very incredibly strong experience, and basically put them in a weekly interaction with our students. So our faculty at the Global Jazz Institute is obviously Danilo Perez, Joe Lovano, John Patitucci, and these are three of the main artists that basically work with our student on a weekly basis. Terry Lynn, that also now has her Jazz and Justice Institute at Berklee, which is another beautiful project. And then we have a series of artists in residence that come, and we like to work with a group of, artists that come and keep on coming, because this way create continuity. They can really follow the students, and can they really see the growth, right? So we have, people like David Lieben coming along, Abdul Cruz, Ben Street. But basically, the idea of these names is not just to be posters for our programs, to really recreate an experience where the students are not learning jazz from books, or necessarily just only from records, or from even great teacher, because Berklee has incredibly jazz faculty anyway. But to really be in that sort of energy of, Lovano coming from, Paris. He just played Paris, and he arrived there, the day after, and he comes with that energy, and he talks to them in that way, and sort of creating a lot of experiential learning. So in the context then of the program, where they have to take all the classes at Berklee as a bigger container, then this really add this older way of, this master musician talking to younger, future to be master musician, and teaching them the craft from that point of view. And so those are really, in a nutshell, a little bit the true concept of the institute, and this idea of creating leadership and really mentorship and promoting mentorship. And also, last thing that is important to say about the institute is right now is the first and only jazz master available at Berklee College of Music in Boston. So Berklee never had a master program, and we were asked to build the first master program, and we have a program that houses 20 students, full scholarship. So if you are accepted at the Global Jazz Institute, you have basically all of the study paid for your master, and it's the only master that Berklee in Boston offers. Now, Berklee also offers a master in Valencia, Spain, but it's on music production, not performance. So that's the other thing about the institute that is very important.
What an incredible program. That's really amazing, Marco. And it's a lesson for all of the educators to hear your words that are so important in the music and outside of the music. It makes such a wonderful difference. Let's talk now about you as a performer. And I know that you've performed all over the world with many of the jazz greats today and in the past. Give us a brief summary of some of the most impactful of those experiences.
Well, one of the, the most definite experience that has truly changed my conception as a musician was my 10 year for 10 years with Eddie Gomez, and meeting Eddie Gomez back a bit, I would say like what, 15 years ago, and start collaborating with him musically, really completely changed so many of my musical sensibility, my musical understanding as an improviser. And so the beauty about this relationship, that it started as an acquaintance, then it became like a musical collaboration. Now it has become this amazing friendship that it's lasted for 15 years. And I recorded 3 albums with him. He produced my first album, Sophia's Art, and played. And he played in my last one, which is Almas Antiguas. And I played in his last album called Per Sempre. We recorded back in Italy during a tour. And I've been touring with him basically for the last 12, 13 years. And last tour we had was actually in November. We played Europe. We were in Paris. We were at the London Jazz Festival. Our concert was actually kind of identified as one of the best of the festival. So that was an amazing, satisfaction. And we were in Serbia, and we basically did this beautiful 2 weeks touring, and to see somebody that is at that level of musicianship, and still with that energy and still with that vision, has given me so much of an understanding of why, the jazz figures that really have made a difference, why they did, because it's like it showed me an internal window on the jazz history that, I could now see from the books. And that to me was incredible. And of course, being surrounded at Berklee by all these artists and playing with Danilo, playing with Danilo is like, I don't even know what to say, because he say, whatever it doesn't matter, because, it will make sure that you feel like naked at all time, because it really believes into like improvisation as a really extemporaneous moment. So yes, well, maybe we play this song, maybe we play this chorus, but listen up, because maybe we don't, or maybe we change the key, or maybe we change whatever. So it's always this incredibly creative, and this idea of like communication, constant, being really on the moment. And now my last project, that I collaborated with Kenny Werner and the great Luciana Souza, in this beautiful, I never wrote a vocal song, and this is the first time I actually wrote lyrics and had, Luciana, this amazing Brazilian singer, and Kenny playing. So all of these are things that are being very, being in this circle of artists has been giving so much to learn, and be feeling like I'm always a student. Like I feel myself, I direct the program, but I'm the one, I'm sitting with all of my students, and I'm just feeling the same sort of like, and I have to say, it's been blessed to be having this community. And my last project that I want to talk about, because this is just being approved, so I'm so excited that I actually had a grant. This was a dream that I had, Professor, because my father is from Naples, and Naples, well, was from Naples. He passed this summer, and Naples has a traditional music that is very beautiful. He has these incredible songs, right, that have these beautiful melodies. And so I always had this dream to do a jazz record with all this music, Napolitan song. But my idea was to have it arranged for string, and to have string and a rhythmic section, and I wanted to arrange it to be John Paritucci. So I got a grant, and this is happening. And basically, John is writing now this arrangement for string quartet and jazz quartet, and we will present this concert, a live stream in December. for the Italian consulate of Boston. And basically, it's going to be all this Napolitan music. I will play tenor and soprano with string. Alan Pasqua on piano, which is one of my favorite piano players. He plays also in my last CD. And Adam Cruz on drums. And John Paritucci on bass. So I can't tell you, I can't wait. So I maybe like he called me last night, so we talked for 2 hours about the arrangement, how you want this, what key, what about if we do this? So it's just so beautiful, it's just like this is what I'm working right now. So I hope that when the link is going to be available, I'll share with all of you, and hopefully you will be able to listen to this concert.
Super. Oh wow. What great energy you have with the passion for your projects and your future projects. I want to thank you also for the lesson that you contributed to our new jazz curriculum, Jazz on the Beginning. You wrote the saxophone lesson. And can you talk a little bit about that and share your feelings about what a young jazz student needs to know?
Yeah, that was I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to create a unit on saxophone and the saxophone in a session is something that I experienced myself. As you know, you've been one of my teacher, and I learned so much by just playing in your band, in a big band and at University of Miami and at Florida International University. And this is something that even last year we created, this big band, and I was playing next to Joe Lovano. And so I feel like, there's such an art form in itself that seems that it's going away, but it's really not, because even if maybe the opportunities are not there as they used to be, but to understand this whole idea of being in a breathing unity with other saxophone player creating music, and being like in this session, and the dynamics, it's such an amazing lesson to teach to young students. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to write this chapter. And for me, I really wanted to talk about this idea of sound, right? Because in a way, jazz encourage us to develop a sound that is personal, right? But then we have this situation where you are with other saxophone player and other musician, you need to blend. So it's still this idea of like democracy, right? Like we all want to have a voice, and we all have a voice, but then when we're together, we want to create this idea of the team, with the idea of like working together, this idea of listening. This is why jazz is such an incredible metaphor, right? Like I'm developing my sound, I know what I like, but now I'm sitting with other four, saxophone player, and we need to get one sound and sound like one. What a message, right? So this was a little bit of what guided me in trying to develop this lesson for your amazing book, to kind of have the student immediately identify with this idea of sound as a voice, where it's your voice, and you really need to recognize you have all of these things you can think about, you like this kind of sound, what kind of sounds you want, there's all this plethora of amazing musicians that shows you what you should strive for, which is to create your own sound. But then there's this other thing that you want to think when you're in a session, how you blend your sound with the other voices. So that was really what was guiding me more than anything, to open this as a conversation about the sound for a saxophone player, which is, it's the obsession you have from the moment you have that horn, right? It's like, the sound, we talk about reeds and mouthpiece, and, people sometimes spend more time in that than practicing, which is absolutely not good. But, what I mean is like, it's so part of the narrative of being a saxophone player, this idea of sound and having the sound and then blending the sound. So as I wrote this for you, I was really wanted to, I start getting to this idea of creating a little bit of units where students would understand there's all this variable, how to create sound. And I found that many times when I see publication talking about sessionals, they don't really speak from that point of view. And this is really what I try to create, that contribution to sort of like try to expose the young student immediately with this idea of of sound and how to really maximize in unity of a session in a big band. And I think even if you will never play in a big band for the rest of your life after you're done in college, is still so much value in caring, in experiencing that, because you maybe not be in a big band, but you be blending with other voices, right? And so playing in that experience really facilitate this personal, almost constructivist experience to really understanding, wow, I'm the second voice, or I'm the third voice, I'm the lead, right? What is my role? Who should I listen to? It's not about me. It's not about me, right? And this is important. It's like, it's not about me. It's about the music, right? So this is, I think, a little bit what I was thinking when I wrote the unit for your book. And I think this is the opportunity that we have when we're talking about sectional and big band. We're teaching this sort of value. So it doesn't really matter that big band music is not in vogue as it used to be. It really doesn't matter. It's an amazing. I talk with Lovano all the time. He had this so much experience in the Woody Herman big band, and he still talk about that idea, right? This idea of being a voice, original voice, blending in a big unity.
Yeah.
And he says, like, there's nothing like a big band can teach you that.
Yeah.
No other experience.
Right. What about improvisation? What are the keys for a young student to begin to study this great art form?
Well, I have to say, I now I have a lot more information because I sort of like really studied with so many of these great mentors and artists, and I also I developed. I'm actually writing a book about music pedagogy, which is one of my master that I did with you at in Miami, and studying about what the theories concerning music education. There's a lot of you have this a lot of people that basically develop incredible theory about how you should teach music, right? And many of them are really contrasting, and many of them may be really different, but they all agree on one thing. They all agree on one thing, that music should be taught sound before symbol. And many times in our jazz program, we don't approach it this way. We sort of like go from the point of view of theory first to justify, And so when you are a young student and you go to a program where they start bombarding you with all this theory, it could really disconnect first your creativity and second in your ear, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is a very dangerous disconnection to create in a young musician, because if he's thinking about what he's playing before hearing, and we train them to be thinking before hearing, we really create a dynamic that is not at all what the master think about. I want to share with you this story because my first time I'm in this recording studio with the great Eddie Gomez, right? Like I'm playing with somebody that I play with Bill Evans for, more than 10 years. And I'm in the same studio. So we're playing, right, this song and I'm playing this tune, and every time there's this chord, and I still remember it was a D flat alter chord, right? And he stops and say, Marco, what are you playing here? Like he didn't like what I was playing there, right? And he stopped like, Marco, what are you, when you see this chord, what are you thinking? And I wasn't expecting this. Like, I'm like, what? It felt like I was back in school, right? And I got a little shocked. I'm like, I said, well, maestro, it's a D flat alter chord. I'm thinking about the D minor scale. And when I said that, he started laughing at me. Like, he did like, like kind of making fun of me. And I was like, wait, did I say the wrong scale? And I had a moment like, wait. I said, no, that's what they taught me in school, right? They taught me like that you see a D flat alter chord, that's the chord, the scale you play. But then I realized, and then he said, well, can you go on the piano and play the sound that you're hearing? So I go to the piano and I play the sound and say, okay, all right, so just resonate with the sound. And to me, then I really understood this lesson. It's like, these people don't think in scales. It's not that it's incorrect. Of course it's correct, but that's not how their creativity works, right? So for me to even answer that, I could see why he would laugh at me. It's like, oh, so you see this chord and you're thinking about a scale, and I had to really think about it and say, wait a second, this is what they taught me at school, right? So that to me was like really a moment of like illumination. It's like, oh, okay. So then when I start studying, I say, well, this idea where jazz is such an auditory, form of communication between musicians, that it's absolutely important, essential that we start from that point of view. So Danilo Perez always say, your instrument is your ear. It's not the saxophone, it's not the piano, your instrument is your ear. And it's so true, right? As jazz musician, if we don't have and develop a good ear and basically a natural understanding of improvising through, yes, an aesthetic that comes from the music and the history, but this idea of sounds and not necessarily scales, right? Now, scales and chords and that old theory is so important to make us give it a context and expand our ears. But I think, in short, Professor, I think that jazz education should really resonate with every single music education theory saying that sound before symbol. Sound before symbol. Before we start talking about harmony, chords, and saying, let's develop the sound. Let's develop the ears. Let's develop this idea of transcribing, playing by ear, playing back. The old way, right? I think we really need to go back to that strongly.
That's such good advice, Marco. Very, very well said. Well, we've come to that point in the interview where I would like to ask if you could play something for us. And I know you have something special to offer us at this time. Tell us.
Well, yes, like I said before, I gave a little bit of anticipation. It's like Professor, I wrote a lot of instrumental music. I love to write music, but I never wrote a song for us, with the lyrics. And so this is my first attempt to write a song that I actually also wrote the lyrics. And it puts me sort of like in a secondary position because, of course, we have the amazing Luciana Souza singing. So I'm basically just, in a way, accompanying her, and she has such an amazing interpretation. But to me, I wanted to show this one because to me, I like what happened in this video for many reasons. First of all, you have this community, right? You have the older mentors. We have Kenny Werner, like one of the most famous American jazz pianists, and you have Luciana Souza, this legendary singer, and then myself as a director of the program, and then you have students from the program playing. So to create this community of younger musicians and older musicians playing my music, that was really special. And also, I wanted to introduce a little bit of this element that make, this idea to create music with element from your culture, right? Jazz, I feel like, is becoming global music. Is a lens where we can really bring a lot of different colors. So this song that you're gonna hear has a little bit of my Italian identity. It's very melodic. In Italy, we're really fascinated by opera and by melodic music. So you will hear it. It's a very melodic music. When I play my solo, I try to really go in that line. I wanted to play. I was thinking about playing something off the way Luciana was singing and that feeling she was creating, and then you'll see this kind of colors. It starts in major, then it goes in minor, then it go back in major, and this idea of using different instruments to create a sound that I felt wanted to represent not a style, but something that I was feeling, right? So I wanted to show this. We recorded this a month before they closed the school because of COVID. So I got super lucky. We're still playing live in one of the Berklee studios. And then the song came out as a single, so that's my last single. Also, I have another single out that came out after that, but this one is special because it's with this great master and this great student from the Berklee Global Jazz Institute. And the song is called Farfallina, which means butterfly in Italian, little butterfly, and it's the idea to this idea of butterfly symbolizing fleeting beauty, something that is very beautiful but has a very short life, right? These things that these symbols sometimes nature put for us to think about, right? Beauty and short, something that is so beautiful but leaves one day, right? So there's a little bit of this sense. And me, Professor, I'm a romantic, so I'm sorry. It's a love song, okay? I hope this is gonna be good enough for this audience.
Are you gliding, butterfly? You draw circles in my mind. You left a winter behind, a long and painful goodbye, and you flew away in the sky. Are you hiding, butterfly? Are your wings too sore to fly? Those dreams we shared in the clouds, where we could never be found, are now still a reason to cry. Those thoughts you hold in your heart, no matter where you fly, they'll never die. Oh, those dreams, my little butterfly. And fly. No matter where the wind will blow, these tears will flow, the heart will soar forevermore, dear butterfly. There are no goodbyes up in the sky, my dear butterfly. in the sky. Are you smiling, butterfly? You draw circles in my mind. You left a winter behind, a long and painful goodbye, and you flew away in the sky. Butterfly, no more lies. Butterfly,
Wow, that was some incredible musical presentation, Marco.
Thank you.
You know, I've known you for quite a few years, and I've known what a beautiful person you are, and what a old soul you have inside of you for the music and for life. Today, you've shared that with a lot of other people and made them a lot smarter and a lot more understanding of who Marco Pignataro is.
Thank you for the opportunity, Professor. And you know that you have my undying gratitude for everything you did for my life.
Thank you, Marco. We love you.
We love you too.
Thank you for joining us, Marco, and appreciate
Thank
all
you,
of the
Bob.
information. To our viewers, we appreciate you joining us and being a part of Jazz Zone Together. We hope you enjoyed the presentation and found it of real value. We hope you will join us for future episodes. In the meantime, please stay safe and please keep making music.